ADHD Rewired, episode 418. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Laura Kane. Laura is a transplant from Boston living in Delray Beach, Florida, with her rescue dog, May. Just prior to the pandemic, she discovered a love of nature photography and is incredibly grateful for this gift. Most days, she could be found taking pictures of birds, gators, and other assorted wildlife. Her top bucket list item is to go on a safari. Creating structure and sticking with it is a constant struggle for her, but she refuses to give up. Hey, Laura.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Honestly, a little nervous, but excited to be here.
A little nervous? Within like next 30 seconds, we'll probably forget that we're recording a podcast, or we're just going to be having this conversation.
Sounds good. I'm excited.
All right. So you were a member of one of our coaching groups, and you shared when we had our graduation party, like a portfolio, sort of slideshow of your photography. And it was interesting how I think you were very much downplayed. People really want to see this and all of that. And it was stunning.
Thank you.
It's always wonderful to be able, as a viewer of art or photography, to when you have that experience where something actually like physically moves you, right? Like you have that emotional response to imagery. And your stuff did that. And not just for me, but for a lot of the other people who were there watching your photography. And I wish everyone could see how uncomfortable Laura is right now with what the compliments that I'm giving. It's like her face is contorting, and it's just like, oh God. So it started as a hobby, and now you just love it.
I do. I love it. And I could cry because I just, out of like happiness and just, I don't know. It's really like therapy for me. I get lost in it. The time goes by. I'm like, how did an hour just go by? And I get to see the beauty. I get to share the beauty. And I love it. But yes, I was definitely uncomfortable with that compliment. Yes.
And, I think that downplaying of when we do things and, bring our gifts for others to experience, I think it can be uncomfortable to hear that. Especially when a lot of our life, the itty bitty shitty committee may have been sort of the lead actor in the role of our life, right?
Yes, for sure. And also, I don't know about for you, but I tend to compare myself, right? So I can look at my pictures and go, I'll look at stuff and go, I love these, but I see other people's photos and I'm like, I'm not nearly as good as that. Or a picture that I absolutely love, Eric, I'll post on Reddit or Facebook or whatever. And it's a picture that I love and I get very little response. And then I post a picture of a gator and like 200 people love it. And I'm like, really? Just an alligator? So anyway, yeah. But it's the combination of the two.
Where do you think that narrative of comparing self to others, saying it's not good enough, like where do you think that stems from?
I don't know. I mean, I grew up in a household that there was a lot of criticism for sure. Mm. Although my mom, I'm sure, would be loving my photography if she was here. But I think just as a society, and I think also with social media in particular, like you're confronted with it on a daily basis.
I mean, social media too, I forget where, I think this is maybe something that Brene Brown said, but it's the idea that even those who are really portraying a kind of a very vulnerable self, and myself included, we're putting the best version of our worst self out there when we're like struggling. we're not showing the entire struggle or the entire mess when we're in struggle. Because, that part of that is boundaries, right? It's, you got to know where that boundary is. So I think that like whatever the comparison is, it's that idea of when we are comparing ourselves to others, we are comparing our insides to others' outside, which is not a fair comparison.
Right. Absolutely.
So one of the things that you wanted to talk about today, we're going to have a kind of explore this through a coaching conversation, was just the struggles of managing your time and sort of structuring your day as someone who's not quote unquote working. Where do you want to start with that?
I don't know. It's always been a struggle, working or not. I think that idea of when you have free time and it's like, oh, I want to do this, 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 and this, but then I'll just sit on my ass and stare at my phone. Right. And I think that holds true for a lot of people with ADHD, that unstructured time, and even normal people, whatever. Right. So here I am not working. So it kind of goes into 7 days a week. So I give myself credit for what I do, but it's finding a way to create that structure, stick with it. And accountability is just huge, and trying to create that for myself with other people from my group or what have you.
So you said you take pictures almost every day, right?
I do. Yes.
So how are you able to get yourself to get out the door to do that?
It's become a habit by now.
Okay.
And I love it. For me, that's the easy part. Going out and taking the pictures is the easy part. The harder part for me is sitting down in front of the computer to edit, or I want to learn how to edit better. So I need to watch these videos, and I keep saying, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I've done it a couple of times. People say, oh, you should create a website. I'm like, you have to be kidding me. So all the things that you've done, I'm like, how does he do all this stuff? Like, you've just done so many things. So the things that require me to really sit down, I think, and focus in a different kind of way.
So you said that the taking the pictures has become a habit. Tell me about that habit. What are your sort of triggers? Do you go out by a certain time? Like, talk to me about what you are doing that's really well ingrained.
It's not enough of a schedule. I try. I'm like, I'm going to be out of the door by 8:30. I'm trying to it goes to bedtime, right? So I need to get to bed at a reasonable hour, and that's a constant struggle. And then if I get to bed, then I can get up. And so I usually strive to be out the door by 9:30 to be someplace.
Okay.
And it's just sort of in my head, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And then some days I'm like, it's too hot or it's too late. So I'm going to do some stuff around the house, and I'll go out later in the day for a sunset shoot.
This is great. You have contingencies. So if this scenario is not ideal or too hot, then you have a plan B. And how do you do with following that?
Okay. Sometimes.
Okay.
It's really frustrating, and I beat myself up because I have these intentions of going to do this. And if I have a plan in place, I do much better. But for some reason, sitting down to create that plan is a constant struggle. So it's like, I just keep going up and down. And I can beat myself up, or I can say, but I'm not giving up, right? And I keep trying to find a way to make this happen. And again, going back to the bedtime thing, and this is huge for me, I was getting caught up on my computer and getting late. And I have a block on my computer. I swear by app blocks and the computer block thing, but the one on the computer, you can change the time, right? So I have it set to shut down at 9:45. But if I'm not so completely focused, I can go in and be like, oh, let me just push that to 10:45 or 11:45. And I'm like, this is fucking stupid. Like, they can't, why? Like, if I had the self-control, then why do I need the block?
What app are you using for your computer?
So on the computer, it's Freedom 2.
Okay.
And I mean, it works. Everything shuts down. And once it shuts down, I can't start it.
Okay.
But I can go in, as opposed to on my phone. This thing is amazing. It's called App Block. You put it into strict mode, and once it's in strict mode, you're done. Like, I cannot go in and make any changes before. So I'll set it for like a week, and it's great.
That's
but
great.
Anyway, off topic sort of. But so I said to one of the people from our coaching group, I said, okay, I have to shut my computer off at 9:45. I cannot be changing. And so I now at 9:45 at night, I'm sending her a message saying, okay, it's off, it's done. And just that little thing makes such a big difference, that accountability piece. But it's so hard to ask for it.
I don't know if there is, but it'd be great if there was a program that sort of included actual accountability, where if you wanted more time, you have to request it from a person and they have to grant it to you. I think that would be great. Like, are you sure you really need more time right now?
Don't you want to go to bed. Yeah. She'd be like, no, you're not.
Because I think
That's
it's
a good
great.
idea, though.
You're using a lot of really good tools. I think that it might be worth exploring. Is there another tool that might work a little bit better that would work as well as the one you have for your phone?
Yeah, I have to look and see. I've got to do some research. If you know of any,
okay,
let me know.
If people can post in the comments on this episode what they use. And, I don't know if you're in our Facebook community, but definitely in the Mighty Networks, go ahead and ask people, like, what are they using? Because I know there's other ones out there.
I will. Yeah. I mean, this is the one that people talked about and it works, but I've got ADHD and an addict mind, and like, I can lie to myself and tell myself, oh, I can do this because I don't really have to get up in the morning, but then I don't feel in control. Like it feels,
it's yucky. Yeah. Yep.
It's not a good feeling. So it's all about how I feel. It's not about that I'm going to miss something, or it's just, I need to go to bed. I need to get up. I need to have that routine for my mental health.
Okay. So with the focus on sort of bedtime and some of the things you are doing are working, but it still sounds like there's other areas that could be strengthened. So your aim to get out of the house in the morning is at 8:30, but really like 9 to 9:30 is kind of that. And that's okay to have that window. If you feel that works for you. If you feel like having too much of that window like creates this sort of slippery slope, then maybe you can explore other ideas.
It's so hot in Florida.
Yeah.
So and it's not a real winter right now. So I really should be, to feel comfortable out taking pictures and not be dying of the heat. Being out by 8:30 is pushing it in terms of that. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's not quite working for me.
In your cues to get ready for bed, is there any cue about the reminder of how hot it is in the morning?
No, that is a fabulous idea.
Because we talk about like having the why attached to the what.
Yes. I have to figure out a way to incorporate that. Like I have a reminder to take my, nighttime stuff to make me tired, but maybe I like that.
Do you have any like smart home devices? Like
I have Alexa on my Fire thing. What is it? I don't know. A tablet from Amazon.
Okay. Because I just recently, I have both a Google Home and Alexa. I've been playing with it at home, and I've been setting up a lot of like home automation stuff. Because I know that one of the things you can do is have it tell you what like the forecast at a certain time.
I didn't know
that.
I
wonder if it was like, around 8:30 p.m. Like tomorrow's forecast is so. Like, oh,
right.
Okay. It's gonna be hot. I gotta get myself out.
That's a great idea, Eric. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So have the forecast. And do you have anything else that can like push weather notifications to you?
I don't know. I've never looked into that before. I mean, I have a weather app on my phone, but something that would push the notifications. I don't know.
Do you have an iPhone or Android?
Android.
You have Android. I imagine they have widgets because they came out with widgets way before iPhone did. Like on my phone, I have on the home screen is like the weather, so it tells me right there. Just knowing that, when I'm getting ready for the evening, especially if it's in that part of the season where it's like, oh, I might be able to play pickleball in the morning if it looks nice. And especially when it's like more days aren't nice enough than not, but sometimes they are. Like it becomes more like relevant for me to look at that weather. It's like, okay, so I'm going to plan for the morning. So I kind of know, because for me to work out in the morning, I have to have an idea at night, like what kind of workout I'm going to be getting. Otherwise, it's like, I can't tell you how many times I was planning on going to play pickleball. And then it's like, oh, it rained overnight and the courts are still wet. And then I just end up scrolling on like Facebook videos. And it's just like, oh, God, that's so frustrating. Okay, so if you really wanted to sort of solidify this 8:30 in the morning, let's explore some other things in addition to kind of what we've already talked about that may help do that. What we should do now that I'm looking at the time, let's take a quick break, and then we will continue this conversation right after the break.
Sounds good.
So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our award-winning online coaching and accountability groups. Every season, our coaching members work together and learn how to ask better questions, plan their days, weeks, and months, and discover that you are not alone.
I decided to join this group because I was stuck.
So I decided to join because I was trying to do this by myself, and it just wasn't working.
I decided to join this group because I had been feeling completely stuck in my life. I couldn't seem to get started and didn't know where I wanted to go or how to get there. I really didn't understand how ADHD was playing a role in that.
I decided to join the group because I became aware of how much ADHD has impacted the use of my time. I don't use it as effectively and positively as I'd like to, and that's been the story of my life.
I have never had an experience like this that I've been dragged kicking and screaming into by myself that has been so impactful and so important for my growth.
Taking this course provided me with ADHD-friendly skills and tools that would have taken me years to learn on my own.
And I realized also that I was doing more planning, maybe more thinking about it than doing, and it was very unstructured and almost random.
Yeah, learning to plan. Planning was probably my biggest thing, and the importance of, daily planning and thinking that through, whether it's the night before, or the day or the morning of, and then also yearly planning and how much that's going to affect me in the future.
Another insight I had was I discovered I need to do my daily planning the night before instead of waiting till the morning of, because when I wait, I have a much harder time making decisions and getting started.
I think that I've made strides that would have taken me 10 years, if not more, if I weren't in this group.
But I've learned from this is that I can make a simple commitment of time of 15 minutes and maybe ideally a time block of an hour, and I can get a lot of stuff done.
And I just want to thank everybody for being here because it's so powerful to just listen and be with everybody else.
I think the best part for me was a group of people who are all coming from different backgrounds, but have a shared experience in having ADHD. So thank you.
We are filling up. Registration for our 28th season of coaching and accountability groups is still open. Once again, we are offering 4 sections. Section 1 at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern with Coach Moira Maben of the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle Podcast. Section 2 with Coach Kat Hoyer is at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. I'm leading Section 3, and that's at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. And for our 4th section, if you live in or around the Australian Eastern Daylight Time Zone, this season, we're excited to be offering a group led by Coach Kat Hoyer that will meet Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the Australian Eastern Time Zone. And since we've heard from so many of you in the US and Canada asking if you could please join this section, we've decided we will open it up to a limited number of spots for you too. If you are in the US or Canada, since Australia is in the future, this group for you would be on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. We have 2 more events coming up where you can register. The first one is on Wednesday, March 16th at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. And if you are in Australia or in that region, that's Thursday, March 17th at 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. And our next and likely last one after that will be the day after, which is Thursday, March 17th at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. Go to the website so you can look at all this information more closely. Registration is by invitation only, so go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our interest list. First, we're going to ask you to confirm your email. And once you do, you'll receive instructions on everything you'll need to know before you receive your invitation. All your pre-registration submissions are due 48 hours prior to the start of each event. Yes, we know it's a lot of information, but don't worry, you'll get all of that information you need to join us for our upcoming registration events once you've added your name and confirmed your email at coachingrewired.com. Join us for what will probably be our last 2 registration events on March 16th and March 17th. Registration is by invitation only, and we do want to invite you because it's more than just the tools. This is the coaching community full of other adults with ADHD who understand the quirks we share and the struggles we face. It's about gaining awareness of our time, our tendencies, and more significantly, ourselves. And finally, it's about the bridges we build and the bridges we cross to the other side. Together, take your next step to live your wholehearted life by going to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. We can't wait to meet you. And we are back. All right. So we explored some ideas and ways of cueing the why for you to really try to tighten that sort of range of times that you're trying to get out by. And again, I do really like your idea of if it gets too hot, then you do it in the evening. I think it's still a great thing to keep sort of on the radar, because how easy is it to create backup plans ahead of time versus in the moment it doesn't work out. Now we have to bring on a bunch of executive functions to figure out what to do next.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Do you work out?
I go through phases.
Okay.
I get a lot of steps in. I get at least 10,000 steps. Okay. I used to love going to the gym, but I can't quite bring myself to do that with the pandemic. Mm-hmm. That's just me. So I vacillate and I go through periods of time when I do and then I don't. And I struggle with like the all or nothing, Eric. Yeah. And I have a hard time focusing on more than one thing. So I'm like, okay, my focus is getting out of the house by this time. I'm like, but wait, and I want to take pictures, but I also want to exercise and I want to do my morning routine. And so it's finding a way to do it all. And it's not really that much. But
have you ever been in an exercise routine where you really feel like your body's like craving it?
I used to, yeah. I mean, when I belonged to the gym and I went to Zumba and I loved it. But since the pandemic, it hasn't kicked in. I love exercise. I do. When I do it, I love it. But I think part of it too is I feed off the energy of other people.
Okay.
So
what about doing some online live classes for exercise?
I have looked into that. I did one. I was like, that was great. I'm going to do that again. And then
what was it?
Really hard. It was a Zumba. It was a Zumba online class, and it was great. Good energy.
So what was the barrier that got you to sign up for it again?
I went away for Thanksgiving and then I
Change
lost
routine.
I literally just done one and it was right before Thanksgiving and then it was shot to hell.
All right. So let me ask, how long would it take you to actually find like the time and schedule for this class again and actually sign up for it?
5 minutes.
Okay.
I mean, it's on the Zumba website. I can find all sorts of classes to take. It's really about creating a schedule for myself, right? Like out the door by 8, home by this time, doing, Zumba at this time, or maybe So just creating that schedule and sticking with it.
Okay.
And I keep falling off the wagon.
Such a huge part, I think, especially of ADHD coaching is let's not just talk about what we're going to do, but let's actually do it. Like, especially when the thing that would help us do the thing is actually one small task. So through the power of editing, we're going to edit something out here in just a moment, because I'm going to ask you right now to go sign up for this class. Would you like to do that?
Sure. Makes me a little anxious to commit, but yes, let's do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like mythic
right,
land.
I'm paying now. All right. I've paid $3 for my Zumba class tomorrow, Eric.
It's only $3. That's amazing.
Yeah. Payment successful. Yay.
So you said that you signed up for this class before and then you just didn't continue it.
Right.
So what would help this be not just a one-time thing?
Accountability. And I just had this random thought when I signed up for it before. I didn't have a roommate, and suddenly I now have a roommate living in my house, and I'm thinking, oh my God, he's gonna walk in and watch me dancing tomorrow. That's just fucking awkward.
That's amazing.
But anyway, no, that's just awkward. But to go back to the question about what to have it keep it going, that was the question, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's accountability. It's all about the accountability. It's having to commit to and it drives me nuts that it's not enough to have a commitment to myself. Like, why the fuck?
What if there's a financial commitment? So like if you actually sign up for a bunch of classes?
Yes, that would probably work. Although $3 isn't. Have you read the book Atomic Habits?
Yes.
There's a part in there. I don't know what they call it, but like the negative contract or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done this with other things where I'm like, okay, guys, if I buy more than whatever at Costco, I'm paying you $25. Like $3 just isn't enough of you know what I mean? It doesn't hurt that much. It helps me to get there, right? Okay, I've signed up and it's a specific time. The financial would be more of me saying to people from my ADHD coaching group that I'm still in touch with, okay, this is what I've committed to. And if I don't show up, if I don't go, I'm paying you.
Do you think there's anyone from your group that would maybe do it with you?
Like be my accountability partner?
Like actually do Zumba with you in this class, or anyone else
Probably
that you know?
Not. I don't know. I could ask, but I'm sure there's plenty of people in my group who would be happy to take my money if I don't show up. So,
okay.
I think that's what I need to do is commit and tell them, and that will help.
Okay. So we have pictures, then we have lunch, right? And then Zumba.
Yes. Yes.
And then shower.
Yes.
One of the things that I have always found helpful, because like for me, exercise is like getting a couple hour boost of like short acting like Adderall, right? It just like it's so I always try to really take advantage of the endorphins of exercise for focus. So I'm wondering, how do you think you would respond to this? So after Zumba and before you shower, you actually get your workspace set up for photo editing. You don't actually do the editing, but you actually get it all ready to go. So your brain is now like thinking about doing the work that you've already visually seen, right? And you're making that first step into working on the editing real easy.
I could do that. I could set up, I could set up the laptops. I use 2 different laptops. Yeah, I could do that. So after Zumba, before shower.
Alternatively, after you come home from taking your pictures, you can also get it set up.
I could do that.
And almost like, because there's certain things that I find that like I sort of try to create these strict rules around that just help me to, because then I'm not having to make decisions, right? So maybe it's like I am not allowed to sit down or do anything else once I come home from taking pictures until I set up the workspace to do the editing.
Yeah, I think that could work. I'm just thinking about whether I'll have time after, because like, again, if I want to go out in the afternoon to take pictures, in summertime, it's not a problem because like it sunsets, right? But here right now, it's getting dark at like 5:30. So I am generally out the door if I'm on top of things by 3:30, 4 o'clock.
Okay.
I'd have a little bit of time to do some editing.
So one of the thoughts of prepping your workspace right when you come home is that just in case you like got back later and you still need to have lunch and you still have your Zumba class, right? Like it gives you sort of these other times where if you don't have the time to do it in that moment, you still have that time to do it and still kind of keeping your routine.
Yeah.
So it's creating that margin.
Yeah. You don't want to have everything back to back to back.
Right. Because it leaves no room for, things like having a scheduled interview at 11 a.m. and then not actually starting until 11:45. Because it was my birthday yesterday, and drinking a bunch of scotch on a Wednesday makes it a little bit harder to get up in the morning. So thanks for your flexibility, by the way. Okay,
no problem.
So we got the first part of the day sort of I want to say figured out, but an idea how that's going to look. You talked about some ideas around adding some additional accountability. I'm curious what happens after like 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon. But we do have to take a quick break. So we will be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our Patreon community. If you enjoy and find value in this podcast, please consider becoming a patron at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Perks start at just $5 a month, and support can start at any amount that works for you. At $5 a month, you'll gain access to a private podcast feed where you can enjoy ad-free episodes of this show. But if you enjoy these ads, you don't actually need to subscribe to the ad-free feed, but you can. And if you support us on Patreon for $25 a month, you'll be able to join me for our patron-only monthly coaching call. Our next patron-only coaching call is on Tuesday, March 22nd at 3 p.m. Central. That's Tuesday, March 22nd at 3 p.m. Central, which is 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern. Whether you want ad-free episodes, you want to join our monthly coaching calls, or want to support this podcast because you find value in this show and can relate to the other stories you hear every week, your support is very much appreciated. Perks start at just $5 a month, and support can start at any amount. Again, thank you so much to all of our patrons, old and new. And if you want to consider getting some extra perks, consider becoming a patron by going to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks, everyone. I always say in the intro of this show that you are not alone. And ADHD Rewired isn't alone either. Check out the rest of the ADHD Rewired podcast family, including ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD ADHD with Will Curb, ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens, and the ADHD Friendly Lifestyle with ADHD Rewired Coach Moira Maven. You can find all of the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network by going to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network. Then every second Tuesday of the month, you can join the ADHD Rewired Podcast family and more of the ADHD Rewired team, including Coach Pat Hoyer and ADHD Rewired's new executive assistant and community manager, Lisa Ciesla, for our monthly live Q&A. Our next live Q&A is next week. That's on Tuesday, March 8th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Register to join us on Zoom next week and for all of our monthly live Q&As by going to ADHDrewired.com/events, where you ask us your ADHD related questions and see just how ADHD we can get. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. And if you love this podcast, please consider leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other podcast player that accepts reviews. Your reviews help this show get in front of more earballs, and we want all of our friends with ADHD to know that they are not alone. Thank you for listening to the show and to all of our shows. Your support means the world to us. Discover more from ADHD Rewired by going to ADHDrewired.com. That's ADHDrewired.com. And we are back. So Laura, you were just telling me, because I asked you how you're doing, and you're like, just repeat what you just said.
I'm okay. I feel, I feel like things are going well, right? But there's this, I say, oh yeah, this all sounds good, but there's this fear of, I'm not going to do it, because that's kind of my history, is things sound good and the intentions are there, but then that fear of not doing it and feeling like I've let you down and let myself down, and those intentions, right? This sounds great. I'm going to do it. And so I'm going to do it. I need to make that accountability as part of it. It's not enough for me to have the plan. It's the reporting to somebody that I did it.
Okay. A couple of things on that. So we should probably look at how do we strengthen the accountability aspect of it, but also how do we rewrite the narrative that says if something that we are aiming to do doesn't work, it means we failed.
I mean, right. It's a learning experience, right? Or I keep trying. And I have reframed it a little bit. I'm not nearly as hard on myself as I used to be, but it's still like, fuck, I said I was going to do that and I didn't do it, but I keep trying. And
are you continuing to try differently, or are you trying to just the same approach and the same strategy over and over again?
Well, that would just be crazy, doing the same thing over and over again. But now that you say it, yeah, I guess I have been pretty much doing the same. I keep trying, keep making these schedules. And so I think the differently part is the accountability, but also, and we just did this here, like you had me sign up right then and there. And so now I have a set time and it's on my calendar. And then I have to add in that other accountability part. And that's hard. Like, I don't know about other people, but it feels like because I'm having to ask somebody else, right, for that help to hold me accountable.
And what does that mean?
Accountable.
That you're asking somebody else for that help? What's the story you're telling yourself?
That I'm being a burden or needy, or that they're thinking, why the fuck can't she just do it herself?
So the people that you're going to ask for, that you would ask for accountability, what do you think the likelihood is that their thoughts are anywhere even near, why the fuck can't you do it herself?
Probably not. I mean, I had an amazing coaching group. So no, I think it's a great group of people. So, but it's still like, it's just literally, I just got this like knot in my stomach. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to ask for that help because it just feels like something that I should be able to do. I know I'm shoulding on myself, but so yeah. So I think I know logically, Eric, that if I ask my people that they will say, sure. And so that's the part that I have to do differently. It's not just the creating the structure, because we've just come up with this plan, but then sharing that plan and reporting back when it's done.
In your accountability team, do people ask you for accountability your own stuff?
No.
Interesting. Call them out on that.
My accountability team has kind of disintegrated over the past several months. Occasionally other people from the coaching group have, reached out. There's
That's great.
People that I've connected with who have said, hey, I need to do this. Can you help me with this? And I'm always happy. Sure. and it does feel good to be asked, right? So that I'm not the only one asking for that help.
Can you repeat what you just said?
It feels good to be asked. It feels good. And it feels good to be able to help somebody else, especially because it's really, and you're helping me say this out loud, like it's really not that big a thing, right? Like, again, it is hard. Even if people are willing to help, it's so ingrained, this sense of I need to do it by myself. Right. And so I'm going to give myself credit that I'm asking for help fairly consistently with my group. I'm like, all right, I need help with this. Put it out there and see who jumps in to say, sure. So, yeah.
I think it was before we hit record, but you had said something about how like, you're like amazed about all the things that I do. So many of the things that I do, I have accountability around. I get help on all kinds of things. I've been thinking about, I know that, I think were you exploring doing TikTok a bit?
I was, and I did it consistently for a little while. And I'm like, oh my God, that just takes way too much energy and time.
So this is something that's still kind of on my radar to do stuff on TikTok. I have not yet figured out how to go onto TikTok and not then spend 3 hours on TikTok scrolling on videos. So if this is something I'm going to pursue to do in TikTok, I need to do it with somebody else because I cannot be left alone on TikTok without somebody to pull me out of that hole. Like oh my gosh. Like Will Curve sent me a video he did on TikTok. Then 3 hours later, I messaged him. I'm like, are you actually able to go to TikTok and not spend half your day on there? Because I just did.
Well, I'm happy to help you with that, Eric. I could be your accountability partner in that. And I'm telling you, the app block is pretty amazing. Because if you know, okay, well, I got to do this video, I got to record, and I only have this much time before my app gets shut down. There's sort of that external, like, oh shit, I got to do it. I don't have time to be scrolling.
Yeah.
So, but I'm happy to help.
For me, I feel like I would need like actually someone who does like video stuff, like here with me, like in my space.
Like literally babysitting to make sure you're
or it's just like they're just using me as like the talent, quote unquote, right? And it's just like everything else after that I don't even touch. Like they're doing the editing, they're doing the other, like, because I feel like for me, like, because I do like doing that stuff. It's one of those activities that it's like, oh, this is fun, this is engaging, it's like it's creative, and I'll spend half a day doing it, and then I'm looking at my other priorities. It's like, okay, well, let's see if I have room to do that other thing tomorrow that I really needed to do yesterday, right? It's sort of knowing yourself and knowing how do we set up the scaffolding and supports. So when we know that we have certain things that our brain just doesn't really have a fighting chance against very well, starting with how do we get these goals met? How do we structure our day when it's just kind of us that is depending on the structure? I think there's a lot of value to having that predictability where we can kind of go into that automaticity of how we go through our day. Like, I don't think about what I have for breakfast or lunch 99% of the time because it's the same every single day. Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, don't you get bored of that? I'm like, well, maybe sometimes, but like the trade-off is worth it.
Definitely. Right. No, I hear you. And you help me to see, like, I've been able to create these plans for myself, right? So I've been doing the same thing over and over again. I've got this plan and I don't stick to it. And so the piece that's really been missing is that accountability and really like saying, okay, this is what I'm doing, and telling somebody that this is what I'm doing.
I'm wondering how you might be able to even use the coaching community or adult study hall to have a regular, almost like daily check-in around particular activities that you want to be doing.
I don't, with adult study hall, I don't know.
I'm almost wondering, I don't know if you would have any interest in this, if you were to maybe lead an Ash Plus session, maybe on a daily basis, or maybe there's like a 20-minute check-in in the morning. You share what the plan is, and maybe it can be specifically for creatives. And then, an evening kind of, all right, how'd you do?
It's a really good idea. Figure out implementation and commitment makes my stomach. But I love the idea. Like, that is brilliant, because I do find that the personal interaction helps tremendously. Almost like an accountability group, but on Zoom, and it's live.
Mm-hmm. and scheduled so it engineers urgency.
I like it. I don't think that's something I can commit to right this very second on air. Even though I don't have a job, I do have some commitments. So yeah, I'd have to figure that out. But I love the idea. I think that's brilliant.
And so it sounds like you're very motivated by that human interaction with others, which also makes sense why you probably have been struggling more through COVID, right? Like it's isolating.
Yeah, I just feel like I personally just feel like we're back to like March of 2020. Like I'm just, so I know we're not, but that's kind of, so yes.
Say more about that.
What, feeling like we're back to March of 2020?
I can tell that brought up stirred up a lot of emotion for you.
Well, yeah, because we've come so far, right? But all of a sudden, and back then there was no vaccines. And so it was really scary back then. But always my fear has always been about the long COVID that nobody seems to be talking about. And so I'm back to curbside pickup and not wanting to socialize and not eating in restaurants and not even wanting to really go to my regular nature places because there's so many freaking people. So yeah, that isolation is hard. And I'm like, I don't want to go back to that. So I have to find a way to maintain connections despite this setback. And I'm hoping it's over pretty quickly.
It is hard to,
good times.
I think back to March of 2020 and when people were like freaking out that they were going to need to cancel school for 2 weeks. Right? It's like, and when we sort of think of how absurd that is now, we've been through a lot. This has been a lot for all of us. And I just the mental health implications that I think this is going to be unfolding for the next decade, the mental health implications of these last 2.5 years.
Absolutely. And so, going back to exercise and how important it is for our mental health. And even if I'm not doing vigorous Zumba, even getting out and taking pictures and carrying my 5-pound camera, like it's exercise, right? So for me, my mental health is so tied into my physical well-being. And so while I sometimes feel like I'm being melodramatic when I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to, like, I am terrified that I would get long COVID because I know some people have had it, and that I wouldn't be able to go out and do this thing that has been my like therapy and the thing that's helped me to stay sane throughout this really crazy time. So
you mentioned earlier that there's a lot of sort of like all or nothing thinking. And when it comes to making decisions, we have to sort of look at what does the actual data say and what's the best decision based on the information we have, and try to get away from the absolutist types of decision making. When I decided to go back to play outdoor pickleball, when we first started, I was in the bubble. I discovered the joys of grocery delivery, and I was like, well, I'm never even going back to going to the grocery store again because this is great. And then like over time, we're like, I just want to go to the store, which I never thought I would actually say. And for the first time since COVID started, I actually played indoor pickleball yesterday, masked. And then I see on this group listserv that I'm on that like there's somebody that just tested positive for COVID that I apparently maybe played with. So some of the decisions that I've been making, like I'm going to Mexico at the end of February. And yeah, I'm nervous about it. But what I'm also nervous about is the mental health implications of staying hunkered down for so long. And so it's like, yes, there's risks involved in those decisions that I've been making, but there's also risks involved in trying to keep myself 100% in a bubble to minimize all risk. And it's like, there's trade-offs and it's hard.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Right. I agree. And so I have to balance that out. And I mean, really up until Omicron, I was feeling pretty good. Like, I'm vaccinated, things are good. I was eating out. I was happy to be around other people. And this has just sort of thrown a wrench into things, but I think you bring up a good point. And so if it starts taking that much of a toll on my mental health, is it worth the risk then of maybe, getting COVID and hoping that I am not one of the people who gets long COVID? It's a balancing act, right?
Like, is there a chance of that happening? Like, what are the chances though? Is it high? Is it low? So I think looking at what the data currently says, what we do know about it.
And that I think is what's hard right now is there's not enough data with Omicron because it's so new. So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to continue getting out and taking pictures. And the beauty of that though, is that there's a whole community of photographers out there. So I run into people that I know out taking pictures. So I can avoid the total isolation.
But I think it does connect to everything else we're exploring. What are the things that hold us back from doing the things that we want to do? And I think some of those things that are holding you back are connected to the fears about getting COVID and connected to the isolation. You want to be around people, right? And
I'm an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I'm one of those. Like I like to be around other people for things like Zumba and exercise and about taking pictures. But yes, it all tied together. And I was ready to go on a safari. Like I literally had started going my bucket list at the beginning of it, ready to go on a safari. I was going to go in February. I'm like, it's as safe as it's going to be. I'm going to do it. Started to research and then this happened. So I'm going to do it at a later date, but I'm going to do it.
Can you start scheduling it for maybe 2023?
You can.
Because I mean, I don't know about you, Laura, but if we're still on this point next year, I'm just like, at what point do we have to be like, this is just a really crappy thing we have to live with, and we have to live. It's like at some point, it's like it's so hard. Like this is a traumatic experience for
the entire world.
Yes,
the entire world. We are all in it together. No, definitely. And actually I might plan it for July just because that's when like the big migration is. I could start at least looking into it to give myself something to look forward to.
Which is so, so important. I mean, like for me, looking forward to this, going to see fish in Mexico. I have a countdown app on my phone. Like I'm just like so excited about it. And I wonder too, if you have that scheduled for July, would learning some of the editing skills that you've been wanting to learn, would it increase that motivation and maybe the rate and speed that you want to actually learn this? So you're like ready to, I'm sure you're going to go and take a gazillion pictures and to be able to know how to do the editing well and efficiently. Does that connect at all for you?
No, not so much. I think thinking about going motivates me more to get a website up and running so that I have something to post them on.
Have you figured out how to do that yet?
No.
Have you explored it at all? Like what, are you going to use like a drag and drop kind of?
I have no idea. Like the whole thing again requires so much executive function and like decision making and overwhelms me. And then I'm just like, I'm not gonna even, so it's there in the back of my head lingering.
Have you looked at all? Have you looked at all, or is the only thing that in your mind is like, this is going to be really hard and I'm just going to avoid this because it feels hard?
I mean, like I know there's GoDaddy and there's Wix and there's, Squarespace? And then there's some that are specific for photography. So yes, I have sort of looked a little bit, but I haven't like created a domain name, like obsessed about things like, well, is Joyful Photography by LBK? Is that like not professional enough? Should I just have it my name? Like I overthink and obsess about.
You could do both, by the way, and have them both point to the same place.
Everything. Say that again. I'm sorry.
You can do like you can have 100 domain names, right, and have them all point to this. So what I would encourage you to do is go to whether it's GoDaddy or any of the other places where you can buy URLs at, and if you think you might like it, just buy it because then you own it. Right. I mean, I bought Adult Study Hall 6 years ago.
Really? That's awesome.
Like I was like, I want to do something more with this at some point. I mean, I probably own like 30 domains and like a lot of them point to the same places. And so I'm just sort of sitting on, and because it's like an idea I have that I might want to do at some point. And it's like, what does it cost me a year? I don't know, like not much to have secured this idea for this domain. So like definitely if you don't currently own your name.com, like do it, go get it.
Okay, right? I can do that.
I knew that I didn't want to have to try to figure out podcasting all by myself. I knew I wanted to get in some kind of class or a community where the community's purpose is to help you figure this out. So I knew 3 people who I wanted to see who had podcasting programs to help people learn how to podcast. So I signed up for a webinar for the first one. I don't need to see the other. Like, this is great. And I just did it, which was a very freeing kind of decision to make. Because I think often we get into this maximizers versus satisfiers. The people who are about like every feature, we've got to make sure it's perfect versus this is good enough. There's a lot of freedom in that. This is good enough.
Yeah. And my perfectionism, and it's gotten better, but that good enough is, and I know perfection is the enemy of good enough, right? Is that the expression?
I mean, you've done.
Like
yeah.
That? Yeah, no, it's for me, because it's not just a website to show my photography. It's a website where people ideally could purchase, which is such a hard thing for me to wrap my head around. And I don't want to be the one having to process an order and mail things out to people.
Okay.
Right. So some of them, there's all these decisions and figuring out the right one. And I have to remember too, right? It's not written in stone, but I keep having to remind myself of that. And you've said this before, getting started is the hardest part. For me, it is the hardest fucking thing. Once I get started in general, I'm pretty good. And then stopping is really hard too.
When do you want to have a domain or two purchased by?
Oh, really? You're going to put me on the spot for that too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course I am.
The purchasing a domain is that's easy. Making the decision for where it's hosted, that's a different thing. But I could purchase the domain today. I could do that.
Do it.
One, Joyful Photography by LBK. We'll start with that.
I love it.
Okay.
Ooh, you just had this really that feels like a lightness coming over you.
Well, yeah, it's this thing that's been hanging over my head, and it's really shouldn't be that big a thing, but having this conversation and going, okay, yeah, I can do that. It's just one step in the right direction, but it's all right, I'm doing it.
We didn't even explore in this conversation. I know we're kind of getting late on time here, but the ultimate why, you're wanting to do a photography business. Are you?
It's hard for me to wrap my head around that. Right. But I feel as if I have so many people telling me that I should, and not that I'm doing it for other people. Right. But it can't hurt to have it out there. So if I have it out there, then I've put it out there. I've put forth that. And it also gives me a sense of purpose with my photography. Right. If that makes sense. Because right now it's I go out, I take pictures, I love it, I share it, but there's no structure to it as opposed to.
So you have this name, Joyful Photography, and yet it sounds like you're just kind of hoarding the joy, because your photography is really, seeing your pictures is truly joyful. It is truly true. It's the way you capture stuff and the lighting and the angles, and it's kind of wow. Right. Well,
thank you. Because I have no idea. Eric, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's purely a God-given luck thing. Because I really don't feel I know what I'm doing. So thank you. And I agree. I look at some of my pictures, I love this picture. It makes me happy when I see these pictures. So thank you. I really appreciate that.
So this episode will probably be up, I don't know, a month or so. So let's say that you're gonna have a website up where people can actually purchase prints of your pictures. I just got a double middle finger. That was great. Thank you. So what's that website going to be? What's the URL?
Joyful Photography by LBK.
Go check out that website, Joyful Photography.
By LBK. Joyful Photography.
We'll put the link in the show notes. And
nothing like a little bit of not pressure. What was the word you talked about for something else? It's
engineering urgency.
And yes, urgency. You've engineered urgency for me.
I think there's probably been at least 24 websites that have been launched as a result of them coming on this podcast, and then they say their website name, and they're like, okay, now I actually have to create this website.
Okay. Well, I will create a website, but there's also my Instagram. So if the website's not there, I'm giving myself an out. Isn't that terrible? But that is my Instagram.
But you can I was going to say, so if people go to that domain, right now it goes to Instagram.
That's my Instagram.
Perfect.
Yep. But I'm going to get the website done. Yes.
What are your key takeaways here?
Key takeaways. Structure obviously is important, but I already knew that. But it's not just having the plan, it's the accountability and commitment. So not just verbalizing it, but now I have to also commit, and I'm going to reach out to some other people. Awesome. So that's one of my biggest takeaways, is creating that accountability, asking for the help as hard as it is. And I'm going to get my website up and running, and good enough is good enough.
That's great.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tivers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.